Hey there, you. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a really interesting source and kind of pushes us to rethink some big ideas about freedom.
Yeah, the source is called Real Freedom, and it's by Kulawal Rafiu Ishmael. And our mission really is just to unpack what's in this text. It's ideas on real freedom, choice, equality, leadership, all based only on what we've read here.
It's definitely a text that makes you pause, challenges some common assumptions we might have about how freedom works, about governance. It offers a different angle.
Exactly. So let's dive into these pages, shall we? See what we can figure out together. Okay, so first up, there's this claim that feels, well, pretty counterintuitive. The text says the right to vote or even be elected. That's not really freedom.
Right, it hits you straight away. But the text explains why it says that. It argues the core of freedom is actually equity.
Equity. How so?
Well, according to this source, people feel genuinely free when the state's laws are grounded in equity, and crucially, when nobody, not even the leader, is above that law, ever. So it's less about the voting act itself and more about the fundamental fairness of the legal system that everyone lives under.
Precisely. It shifts the focus. And, building on that, the text then questions if we even exercise genuine free will when we do make choices, like voting.
Ah, yes, the susceptible law. That was a fascinating concept. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yes, quite something. So the text calls our voting decision voters' preference, right? But it says this isn't pure free will. It's determined by what it calls a subliminal relation.
Subliminal relation, meaning...
It's like this complex mix. It involves you, the voter, the candidate, their attributes, even things like position and time. It's about how all these things harmoniously couple together.
So my choice isn't just my choice.
Not entirely, according to this text. It says preference is influenced by the, let me get the phrasing right, the picker's complementary attributive variables, harmony with the options, augment position, and time. Basically, external factors and internal states aligning.
Which kind of connects to another point it makes. If freedom meant being totally unconnected, then nobody's free.
Right.
Because it says everything is connected.
Exactly. All palpable projections subsist on their symbiotic connections. That's the quote. It uses this idea to draw a really key distinction
Between
the concept of human freedom, which it sees as fundamental, and free will, which it basically calls an illusion.
An illusion. So no agency at all.
Well, not quite no agency. It suggests our traits and actions come from accumulated experiences, like reflexes built up over time. But importantly, it does say we can achieve a relative level of willpower.
How?
By observing, by learning from these patterns, these sequences of experience. So there's a path to some level of conscious direction, even if pure free will is off the table.
Okay, so if free will is mostly an illusion, what is real freedom then? That's the title, after all.
Right. And real freedom here isn't something given, like a right. It's something you have to strive for individually.
Strive for? How? What is it?
The text describes it as an internal state, a state of knowing, learned from those experiences we talked about, that actually blot out all senses of worries and fears. It's about inner peace, essentially.
That sounds very different from, say, human rights.
Totally. And the text makes that contrast explicit. It talks about real human right as something separate. That is statutory. It's agreed upon. It's given by the state or society. It's patterned on the concept of freedom, but it's not the same as that internal real freedom.
And these real human rights, the statutory ones, the text says they have limits, right? They aren't about absolute freedom from any constraint. It mentions things like excessive dreams or adventures.
Yes, exactly. Rights like association, speech, criticism, they need to be accounted for, as the text puts it. They exist within a framework.
Why, though? Why account for them or limit them?
The reasoning given is pretty stark. It argues a certain amount of worry, maybe even fear, is rationally required to be human. The complete lack of boundaries isn't freedom, it's chaos. Yeah, it warns that without order, without compromise, and it uses the phrase, compromise tames the beast, you just have a cataclysmic jumble. So rights need structure, need compromise to function in a society.
Okay, that makes sense within its logic. Let's pivot slightly to equality in leadership. The source suggests something interesting about who can lead.
It does. It acknowledges people have different skills, sure, but it introduces this idea of temporal dynamics, like specific time periods.
Meaning,
within certain intervals, perceptions can shift. If the right variables align, pretty much anyone could become a focal point, could potentially rise to leadership. It's not just about inherent fixed qualities.
So it's not necessarily the person you'd expect based on, say, fame or wealth.
Definitely not. The text is very clear on that.
Right.
Fame and excessive wealth are explicitly not indicators of good leadership, according to this source.
So what are the indicators?
It points to things like physical and practical ingenuity. And fundamentally, it stresses harmony with ambience and time, being the right person for that specific moment.
And it also emphasizes the structure of a just society, right? One built on cooperation.
Yes, a society where the laws allow almost everyone who meets justifiable requirements
Right.
a chance to participate in managing the state. It's about broad participation, not concentrated power.
And for those who do end up in leadership, is there one absolute requirement mentioned?
There is one non-negotiable prerequisite:
Which is?
absolute, unwavering support for the rule of law.
Hmm.
And, crucially, the resolute readiness of that leader to be punished according to that same law if they break it. No exceptions.
Wow. Okay, so quite a journey through this text. We started with questioning voting as the core of freedom.
Move through the illusion of pure free will, the influence of that susceptible law.
Defined real freedom as that internal state of knowing, distinct from statutory real human rights, which require compromise.
And ended up looking at its vision for a just society, equitable laws, leadership based on ingenuity and harmony with the times, not fame, and absolute accountability under the law.
It really paints a picture where everything is interconnected, doesn't it? Individual striving, the social structure, the nature of leadership.
It really does. That interconnectedness seems central to its whole argument. How individual experience shapes potential, how societal rules create necessary order, and how leadership fits into that specific time and context.
So here's something for you to think about listening in. If, as this text suggests, our choices are influenced by these subtle harmonies, these external variables, and if real freedom is actually an internal state that quiets fear, how might that change the way you view your own decisions, your rights, and maybe even the society you're part of? Lots to mull over there. That's our deep dive into real freedom for today.